Welcome to The Confidence Curve with Ashley and Rick Bowers, where personal and professional journeys define the art of scaling with confidence. Whether you're a business leader navigating change or someone seeking personal growth, this podcast offers insights and actionable advice to help you thrive. Now let's dive into today's conversation with our incredible guest.
Welcome to The Confidence Curve. Myself, Ashley Bowers, and my business partner, husband, Rick Bowers, are here to host. We have our guest, Sean, with New Frontier Immigration. We are so excited to have you here with us today and getting to learn a little bit more about you over the last week or so. Just really intrigued with all of the work you're doing and the good cause that you're fighting as a part of that. So if you want, just kick us off. Tell us a little bit about you and the business and how you got started.
Thank you for having me on. I'm super excited to be here too. Actually, our company just reached out from your last podcast, where it was the Televerde Foundation, and we're going to start partnering with them. So it's really cool. Okay, so I've enjoyed listening to your podcast, so keep it up. My background, I'm the CFOO of New Frontier Immigration Law. We have 2 locations here in the Valley, in Phoenix, and we're expanding to California later this year, Texas next year. And we are one of the fastest growing law firms in America, the fastest growing law firm in Arizona, and one of the top 1,000 fastest growing companies in America. And our specialty is immigration law. We do family-based immigration. We do a little bit of everything, but primarily family-based. And we have about 120 employees. Most of them are actually remote. I guess we're maybe 50-50 now. But as our business grew so much during COVID, we hired a lot of remote employees. Now we're about half and half remote or local. Prior to this, I was a fighter pilot in the Air Force for 20 years, and my wife founded the company when we moved to Phoenix, which was about 5.5 years ago or so. At that time, we'd been living overseas for 5 years. We moved back to America, and my wife just said, I don't want to have a boss. I don't want to work for anybody. I'm going to open a business. I was like, okay, that sounds cool. What do we do? You know, and she wisely asked for directions. So we hired a business coach and started out. And I've been kind of with her since day one, helping on the financial side of things, where she is the brains and the genius and the legal, the marketing, and all that good stuff behind it. As the company grew, I retired from the Air Force and am now full-time with New Frontier.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your service in the military, but then also everything you're doing now. And I want to dig into kind of the cause behind what you're doing and the people that you're supporting. But before we do that, you mentioned business coach. And when we talked previously, you talked about that being one of the very first decisions that you guys made in your business. And obviously there's a lot of investment and risk and vulnerability that comes along with it. So what had you guys decide to take that plunge as your first big decision? And looking back, you know, how much do you believe in that decision as a first step for people that are starting their businesses?
Well, hindsight's easier to look back and go, oh, look at that great decision we made. But I can tell you it wasn't easy. Sitting around, we were at this little Formica table sitting in the temporary lodging of Luke Air Force Base. And at that time, we just moved back from overseas. We had no house, no cars, no nothing. And we didn't know anybody in Phoenix. We had no business connections. We had no family. We had no clients or anything. And the very first thing we did was spend money on a business coach. And at that time was the probably single largest investment we'd ever made, except once before we'd bought a house and sold it. But that was like the biggest investment we'd ever made. And my wife was all for it. She was like, we're going to do this. This is going to be great. And I was a bit hesitant. And I think what finally brought me around was the idea that, and I told you this before, even Michael Jordan in his prime, and I like basketball, at his peak, he had a coach. He had more than one coach. And to think that the GOAT, the greatest of all time, needed a coach and had a coach, to think that I didn't need a coach in business actually seems silly in hindsight, because it's not something I had done. I had been in charge of organizations. I was a commander of a fighter squadron with hundreds of people and millions of dollars in assets, but I had never founded a business from the ground up. So to think that I could step into it and do it successfully from day one was just kind of crazy. So in hindsight, the investment looks minuscule. Wow, we have now, had a return on investment of probably 1,000x on that first business coach. But it was a game changer for us, and it set us up for success from day one.
Great.
Coaching is one thing that I never thought I would do. And as part of our Apex advisory business, I do a lot of coaching. It's probably the majority of what I've been doing lately. And it's really amazing because when you get in with a person that you're coaching and working with that wants to get better, it's really just asking the questions, and then it's all the words that come out of the person that you're coaching. They have all the words. They just haven't thought of those things in a certain order. And so how you can kind of put that in place, and it's exciting to watch the light bulbs go off above their heads and all of that kind of thing. So as you've kind of built the business, you said you're up to about 120 employees, and you had over 300 people when you were in the Air Force with the squadron. Kind of what are some similarities or differences that you see in managing the two different groups of people?
It's interesting because people are people, and it is something that it takes time as you're in the startup phase.
Yeah.
You go through a lot of people to find the right people, and then you reach kind of a critical mass where you can actually afford to hire leadership and people to help you manage and run other people. And that's when things really start to take off. And we're in a phase right now, and that's what we say 2025 is a year of people for us, because that's all that it is. We could sit down all day and come up with great new ideas of ways to grow the business and things that we can do. But if we don't have the right people there to help us launch these initiatives, then it doesn't matter. And so between being in the military and now being in civilian life, people management is a lot of the same stuff across the board. But one big difference was coming out of the military, you come from an organization that's been around for 100 years or more. So when I took over a squadron with 287 people in it, I was given the playbook. And it's the playbook that has worked for decades and decades before I ever took that role. So I could come in and tweak it a little and add my own flair to it and maybe make it 1% better. That is completely different than starting with a blank sheet of paper and saying, how do I get all these people on board with what we're about to do? Yeah. How do I make sure they know everything from the tiniest detail, like what to wear to work, to the most important thing, like how to correctly file a case to USCIS? Okay. And so that, I would say, is the big difference is in a startup or even in a civilian business, when you don't have all of this infrastructure in place, there's a lot more to it in getting everybody rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you guys have done a tremendous job in scaling the organization. Congratulations on landing twice on the Inc. 5000 of fastest growing companies. That's amazing. It feels like every year, I know with leading companies, you're working through things, you think you solved it, and then, and I think you mentioned this too, then all of a sudden feel like you're right back in that circle solving the same problem. And on the surface, it's easy to look at it that way, right? That it's the same problem, but you have more people, different people, more customers, more policies. So the solve is very different. You're really not fixing the same thing over and over again. So how have you guys really approached that challenge and that feeling like you're on that hamster wheel that you kind of can't get off as it relates to growing the business?
Well, we've fought it a lot in the beginning, thinking, why is everything breaking? Until we finally realized we view our business as kind of a circle or a wheel, and each section of that wheel is a different aspect of our business. And as we work our way around it, everything starts for us with marketing. We put money into marketing or events or whatever we're going to do, and that brings us leads and brings us eventually clients, which is our sales department. Those clients are onboarded, and now we have to do the work, and that's our operations. And we work our way around this circle, and when we get back around to the end, we have revenue in the door. We take a percentage of that and we put it back into marketing, and we start our way around the wheel again. But what we realize is that it's not a circle, it's more of a spiral, because we started so small where, my wife was the first employee and only employee for a little while. And she was the director of marketing, director of sales, director of people, all those things. And then as we went around the wheel, it wasn't that everything was broken. It's just that we'd grown out and our wheel got bigger. And so it ended up being more of a spiral, because each time around, instead of having 2 new employees to manage, now we had 20 new employees. And the policies that worked for 2 people just don't carry over to 20 people or 100 or more than that. Mm-hmm. So while in the beginning it felt like everything was broken, we came to realize that it's not that it's broken, it's that we're growing. Mm-hmm. And we have to continually revisit those. And there have been times where we actually skipped writing an SOP for something because we said, hey, we're growing so fast that in 3 months, if we write this SOP, it's going to be completely overcome by events, OBE. And so we're just going to skip it right now. Here's our general guidelines. See you again in 6 months. Keep working on it. And so that's kind of how we've handled the rapid growth.
Yeah. Well, and as you start to implement policies and procedures and things like that too, you hear the dreaded words of we're becoming corporate, right, from employees. And it's like, you can have structure and give guidance, which can actually really be empowering and can, give a lot of autonomy to employees and things. But we definitely always talk to clients and have heard personally of, well, why do we have to do this? We didn't used to have to have a PTO policy, or we didn't used to have that. But when you start to get in that 50, 100, 200, 300, it really makes a big difference in how the operation can run effectively.
That's so true. And when you're trying to add value to your clients, you start out and it's just you and your ideas, and you're creating this company, and you're constantly finding ways to add value. And when you bring people on, you can't just carbon copy your memory into their mind and say, do all these things. And so in order to show people what you're trying to accomplish, you have to start putting these policies in place, and as you grow. And for us, we have a plan, and now it's our 2035 plan, but it goes out 10 years, and we've told our whole staff we're a startup for these 10 years. We're 5 years in, 10 more years, we're still in the startup phase. So expect that the SOPs we write today will probably be rewritten in another year or two when we have multiple locations in other states, and these, Phoenix-based rules that we have don't work anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So as you've built the business, from our conversation the other day, you kind of were able to build businesses because of the business. Can you talk a little bit about that, and how the things that you were already doing, now you could package that and create a whole nother revenue stream?
Yes. We call it our ecosystem.
Okay.
And we kind of think of it like how they built out the iPhone. When they built the iPhone, maybe they were, but they weren't necessarily thinking that they were also going to control the market on music in the world, and that they were going to control the market on podcasts and on how you're delivered your email. They just built a great product that was a phone, and everything else added on. Apple now has this ecosystem where you can't get your information from anywhere except them. Right. And so that's kind of the concept. And we built the law firm as our first business and our largest business. But as we had other needs, I mentioned we have about 60 remote employees. We bring many of them to Phoenix for training, or for set amount of times to come here and do. They might appear in court, or they might just come for events. We were spending a ton of money on hotels and per diem and all those things. So we said, why don't we just create a space where our employees can stay, and when we don't need it for the business, we'll rent it out. And so from that grew a side business. We have 11 Airbnbs. And then we also bought some multifamily after that. We saw a lot of value in buying commercial property that we could then occupy as our company and rent out to other people who need space. And so each one of these things became its own separate business, its own separate enterprise. And we even hired people to help us run that. So we don't do anything with our Airbnbs. We have a couple employees on that side of the house who handle that stuff. We have a property management company that handles our commercial property. We now have a university, and that one stemmed out of, we have 120 employees. We, when you're in a startup phase, you're going through like 5 employees a month, because we would hire 10 or 20 at a time, train them up, and only 10 of them would still be around in a month, because for whatever reason. So we're training so many people that we just wanted to make it repeatable and simple. And so we formalized how we were training, and we built it into an online platform. We use Kajabi. A lot of people use that for online education. But then we realized that there was a need elsewhere for that same education. And so we sold licenses to other immigration law firms who need to train their employees. We have a very robust platform to become a legal assistant or paralegal specific to immigration law. And we share that with other immigration law firms. And one of the main things, and one of our, our core principles, is the belief that there's an abundance. And so there is nobody anywhere in America or in Phoenix or anywhere that is our competitor. We're not competing with anybody. There are more than enough clients for everybody. There's more than enough to go around. And that's kind of our view of everything.
Great.
We started the conversation, mentioned education now. We started the conversation with the coaching that you guys elected to receive in the beginning of your business. How has your approach to education for you and your wife, and really the on-the-business education, evolved since you started?
It's evolved a lot. We'd always been the kind of people who valued education. We both have degrees from university and master's degrees. But there's a lot of value to personal growth, and that's education too. And what we found was, as our company grew, if we didn't grow with it, we wouldn't be ready. So when we first hit 6-figure company, we had never run a 6-figure company before. So we had to learn some new things, and we had to grow in order to be good leaders of that and good stewards of that company. When we hit 7 figures for the first time, we had to learn how to be business owners of a 7-figure business and how to take care of our people and how to correctly run that business. And again, when we hit 8 figures, as you hit all these different milestones in your business, you have to grow with it or the business is going to leave you behind. And unfortunately, that does happen with employees sometimes, where they join at one stage, you're still in growth mode, and they don't stay around because they don't want to grow with it. But I think that personal development and personal growth precedes professional growth. And if you want to grow in any industry and anything you're doing professionally, you have got to start by looking inward and working on yourself. And so both my wife and I invest a lot in our personal development. We've worked with 3 different business coaches, each for about 2 to 3 years. We both independently have coaching, and we also do a lot of off-site events. Once or twice a year, we'll go to conferences, retreats, those sorts of things, just working on ourselves because, we want to keep leading this company for many years to come, and we have to grow with it.
Yeah. It's so funny you say about, the 6-figure, the 7-figure. I remember I had an executive coach, and I was president of the company that I was working at, and at the time it was like a $7 million company, and our growth goal was to get to 10 in that moment, in the near future. What am I going to do? How am I going to know what to do? And every time we would have that conversation, he would just look at me and say, did you know how to do it when it was 7 before you did it? Did you know how to do it? And you do, you learn along the way. And even just fast forward to my days at HomeSmart when the owner was like, hey, I want you to take this thing public. And I was like, you are crazy. Let's hire you a team. I don't know how to do that. And he's like, hire yourself a team that knows how to do that and surround yourself. And I think that's a big piece of the growth, right? You never want to be the smartest person in the room when you're leading a company. You want everyone else around you to be able to lift the organization up and lift your people up and continue that cause and to be able to learn from each other. So it is interesting because we look forward and we're like, how are we going to do that? And we look back and we're like, how did we not know how to do that? Because you learn in that journey too,
I think that's really insightful. And we try to not focus on the how, which is where naturally our instinct is to go to how are we going to do it. And we try to remove ourselves from that and say, why are we going to do it? And really focus on that, and the how will present itself as you go.
So we've talked a lot about people, and you brought up the hiring, and sometimes in the early days where you would hire 10 and you would lose 5 and then you'd hire 20. So how is the hiring process as you've gone over 100 and over the last year or so? Have you made shifts in the hiring process, or what are some of the things that have really made a difference for you in hiring the right people for the organization?
I think a big shift is that we got better.
Okay.
And just like working with the coach, you start out and you can't make a free throw, and eventually you practice enough times that you get better at it. Yeah. So I think that was a key thing, is we got better at interviewing and hiring. And then we also got more clarity because we spent more time on the big picture, on what we're trying to accomplish, looking towards the future, and really spending time writing out our needs. And when we got really clear on what we needed, and we still do this. In fact, we were doing this last night for a new position that we're hiring for right now, trying to become really clear on exactly what we're hiring for. Because until you're clear on that, you're never going to find the right person. You'll find plenty of good people. There's tons of great applicants out there in every job we've ever put out. But if you're not clear on what you're hiring for, then you're not going to find the right match. In the beginning, it was a little bit of the, try to get as many people as we can and find a couple good amongst the group of people. And we've really refined that down to trying to find the right people. Yeah. And then the last part is, I mentioned earlier, that critical mass. When we reach the point where we could actually hire a director of people and culture, and we could actually hire a recruiter, and we start, those people come in and make us exponentially better than ourselves alone could do it.
Focusing a little bit back in on the people that you guys serve, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about that and the critical work that you're doing for a very special group of individuals?
You bet. So at New Frontier Immigration Law, we do family-based immigration, and our primary clients are actually a T visa, which is for human trafficking. We also, our 2 other main case types are VAWA, which is Violence Against Women Act, and U visa, which is essentially if someone commits a crime against you while you're in the United States, you assist law enforcement. There is a path to a green card that way. There's a common misconception about immigration that people can just cross the border, come into our office and we'll be able to help them stay. And that's not how it works. For all the politicizing of immigration that there is, it's actually really, really a net positive for our country. And we could go off on that topic all day. Yeah. But the point is, there's a lot of people out there who really need help. I'm a first generation American.
No problem.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I love the passion.
And the people that we help are what it's all about.
Yeah.
And our mission and our vision, I should say, for New Frontier is to help 1 million people live free in the United States.
No, it's absolutely amazing. You mentioned the Televerde Foundation earlier, and I'll always take a chance to give them a plug. I'm on the board of the foundation, and they are assisting people with reentry after being incarcerated, and just the number of women who are incarcerated, over 60% of them have children, and so breaking the cycle and changing things. And a lot of the people you're helping, right, you want to break those cycles, and you want to and point them onto a better life. And housing is a big issue. When you said multifamily, I'm like, oh yes, you and Michelle are going to get along great, because there's so many misconceptions about different pieces of the population and different situations in our society. And if we really dig in deep, there's a lot of perception changes that can happen. I was one of those people and went into the prison to tour it before getting on the board. And, just every interaction you have changes your perception, and you really want to, do more and help people who want to be helped. These are people who want to be here and have a better life and have that opportunity. So I think it's absolutely amazing of what the work
we're all
you guys are doing.
human at the core. Yeah. You guys said that in your podcast, but we're all human at the core.
Yeah.
And everyone is just trying to live their own version of their best life. No one should be judged for the worst act that they do. And people who come here so often, our main client type being T visas, human trafficking. We in Phoenix, being so close to the border, we have a lot of people who've been labor trafficked. They're brought here to work, and then their employer holds it over them, withholds paychecks, threatens to call ICE, those sorts of things, in order to make them work longer hours. And they're being taken advantage of. So we have an entire population of human beings living here in Phoenix among us that are just disenfranchised because they have no recourse, and they're living in the shadows, and they're already here, and they're contributing to our society. They say that if and I'll give some stats and I'll give some numbers. Okay. Most of this comes from Peter Zeihan and his research. Excellent book called Accidental Superpower. Talks about why America is the global superpower and why it will remain that way. And he has an entire section on immigration, and he talks a lot about it. I like his work because it's very scientific. I have a background in engineering, and so I'm very much like numbers and engineering. But if we didn't have all the undocumented people who are currently here serving our community, that inflation would have been 8 to 10% over the last couple of years because of the lack of a workforce. And when you talk about mass deportations or the number of people who are here undocumented, I think what it comes down to is that America is a nation of rule followers, and I get that. I was in the military. Where else do you find more rules than the military? Yeah. And every person I have talked to, no matter where they are on the political spectrum or the whatever their personal beliefs are, to a person, they have said, I'm fine with immigration as long as it's done legally. And so I think that there's kind of this block around the idea of illegal immigration, somebody who came into this country illegally versus somebody who came here legally. But the misunderstanding there is that there really isn't a way to come here legally. That's because our system is broken and needs to be fixed. My wife and I went to Washington back in December, and we met with numerous senators from Arizona and other places to talk about immigration. And to a person, both sides of the aisle, everyone agreed, yes, 100% we need immigration reform. And we said, this is amazing. This is so great. Are you going to do anything? And they said, no, it's too politically charged. We're not going to touch that topic right now. So it's interesting that on both sides of the aisle, everyone's in agreement that we need to fix it because our rules are a mess. But nobody's willing to do anything about it. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. It's commendable.
Well, hopefully you'll have some luck in that case, because it doesn't make any sense when you can agree on something but don't do it for political reasons. We don't want to go to political here.
Well, we find that in our businesses too, right? Like you'll have team members sitting around a boardroom table, and everyone will be looking at what the problem is and whether it's a people problem, whether it's a long-term process problem, or my favorites were always like, well, the Ashley said thing. And it's like, well, when did I say that? 5 years ago? Like, why don't we address that again? and when everyone can agree, and then have that safe place to move forward and ask questions and kind of create some of that change in organizations or in anything that we're doing, right? It can be really powerful, but we do tend to paralyze ourselves, I think. Paralyze ourselves in agreement, which is a very interesting human behavior.
Yeah, that's so true. When you look at jobs in America, right, we're at joblessness is pretty low right now. We need more people to work. But there's an interesting thing is that there is no limit to the number of jobs. So America has 150 million jobs or something. I don't remember the last number. But China has like 700 million jobs. It's not because they have more industry. They have more people. And with more people, it creates more jobs. And if an engineer moves to the middle of nowhere in Wyoming and starts a business out of his or her garage and they start making widgets and then they hire someone to come work with them, well, that person moves there. And now you have two houses. And then someone else moves there to help them package and ship. And they have kids. And now you need a school and doctors. You can literally build a city out of nothing with an idea. And those jobs didn't exist before. Our company didn't have 120 jobs 5 years ago. So there are more than enough jobs for everybody. And the more people that come here, it stimulates our economy. Back to Peter Zeihan's work, he talks about a healthy economy has what's called a demographic pyramid. That is fewer people at the top, which is the older people, and then younger people, more of them at the bottom. Almost every country in the world has an inverted pyramid right now, and the worst is China, as we have heard all about that. America we're actually pretty healthy. It's not ideal, but it's pretty healthy. But one interesting thing is that we have this great big lever that if we want to pull this lever, we can change the shape of our pyramid. We can make it wider at the bottom or at the top. We can literally do whatever we want with this lever. We just choose not to do it because we're all in agreement, but we disagree that someone should move it. And China can't do that. They can't just open the gates and bring in some more people to help them fix their economy. And frankly, if you read Peter Zeihan's work, you'll see that they're headed for a rough century based on their population is expected to be cut in half by the end of the century.
I thought it was interesting when you talked about it's a simple calculation that from the time someone's born, 20 years later, they enter the workforce. And so 20 years from now, we know how many we're going to need. And it's just it's a calculation.
Yeah, and going back to math and numbers because I love it, that's exactly right. We can tell you with 99.9% accuracy how many babies were born in 2024. So you can now look at it and go, well, with about 99% accuracy, I can tell you how many people will enter the workforce in 2044.
Yeah.
And based on that number and the rest of our demographic pyramid, which is all known, I can tell you how many jobs we will have and how many we need. And based on that, we could, 20 years in advance, be setting the visa quotas based on actual science and actual numbers and how do we remain a healthy nation from a demographic pyramid type standpoint.
Yeah, I remember just with everything going on in 2020, 2021, a lot of the economists and statisticians were talking just about this, right? And everyone's fears of, who is going to take over, superpowers, all of that. Can America continue to be as strong as it is? And when, like you said, when you look at the math, when you read those different books or the different studies, we do have the power to stay in that place if we choose. Tapping into, job creation all stems from innovation, right? And so that innovative side of you, what kind of gives you that spark or that inspiration to say, yes, obviously there's a direct need for the Airbnbs. And so, that's kind of a no-brainer almost of like, hey, let's do it this way. But to create those new businesses and new ideas, and what gives you the spark and what also gives you guys the energy to say like, hey, let's do one more thing.
I think some of it is just, and I don't know if this is the right answer, but some of it is just innate in who I am. We, every year, my wife and I do these core values exercises, and we do our annual goal setting. And my core values are legacy, innovation, and adventure. And the first time we ever did it, I remember my wife was like, oh my gosh, you make so much more sense now that I know this. She was like, all your crazy ideas that you're coming up with. And she's like, and the fact that you want to like go out and sign up for an Ironman or go hike a mountain or something, she's like, that makes no sense to me. But now that I know that adventure is one of your core values, that's part of who you are. And so innovation is one of my core values. It's also a company core value. But for me personally, that's just something, it's an area that I thrive in. I love creating something new. Finding elegant solutions to complex problems is how I like to word it. Because that just, I don't know, it brings me joy and it kind of lights me up when I work on problems like that. And so when we have these really, really big problems like immigration, and what we're doing is just, it's the tiniest little fraction of people that we're helping, but we have this vision to help many, many more. And the way will probably do that. How do we help 1 million people? We're going to have to change some laws. We're going to have to make some really big movement, but we have time to do it, and we're going to keep working on it. And so, yeah, I guess innovation is just something that I thrive on and I love.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Does that kind of channel into having different geographical locations as well? Because you talked about Los Angeles and I believe Houston, you said.
Yep. So we've known for a while that if we want to make major change, we need to get out of Phoenix. Phoenix is great. It's a great place to start. We absolutely love Phoenix. But we know if we want to go we have to be able to go state to state. And what's nice about immigration law is that it's federal. So we can practice in any state because the law we're practicing is controlled by the federal government, not the state governments. So we are able to pretty easily cross state borders without having to go through a whole new set of state laws, like somebody might if they practice personal injury. Sure. You might have a different set of laws, or you will, in California versus Arizona. We're under the same blanket of immigration law. And so we look at the need, and we commissioned a pretty big study to be done on this, and we looked across America at the areas with the highest need. And based on that, we built out our 10-year plan with all the locations that have the highest need. There are immigration lawyers, there's plenty of them in Los Angeles, and it's not our intent to go there and take business from anybody. There's just so many people who need help in Los Angeles that there's more than enough to go around. The same is true of Texas and Nevada and New York and Illinois and all these other places that we've identified in our 10-year plan as a true need for people.
Sure.
It's got to make an impact on the homeless situation too, because if you can get these people to where they can work and collect a paycheck and all of that, this has to make an impact there.
I would hope so. I think homelessness is something that Phoenix, especially being a Southwest city, we really struggle with, and it is definitely reaching the level of crisis. And not every state, not every city sees it, I think, the way Phoenix does, but it is becoming a major problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, that's what the work of the foundation. If we can get people out and working right away and having that sense of belonging and that sense of, pride in what they're doing, and then they stay out and they build that life, and, everything kind of cascades from there, which is the work that all of us want to do, right? Helping people. It's been such a great time talking with you today. I don't want to leave this conversation without touching a little bit on your foundation as well. Obviously, we talked a little bit about the population that you guys are serving and the cause that you're trying to make an impact on. And that's not necessarily a group that self-pay is the easiest way forward. And so I'm sure that there's a lot of philanthropic aspects to that. So you guys created a foundation. If you want to give us a little bit of information on that, maybe how people could get involved and provide some help.
It's called New Frontier Foundation, and kind of like our other pieces of our ecosystem, we saw a need, and we branched out into that because we saw that we were somebody well-equipped to fill that need. We take some pro bono cases, but as a business, when you're trying to run a business, you can only do so many pro bono cases before you can't keep the lights on and pay everybody's salary. And so what we found was that the wait list for pro bono was just lining up, getting longer and longer and longer, and with no end in sight. And that is people who come in, they go through our screening process, and I should mention that our success rate in immigration law is 100%, literally 100%. We don't put that on our advertisements and stuff because there's some ethics rules about that. Yeah. But we screen so hard up front for people to make sure that they truly do qualify, that by the time we filed their case, it's almost a no-brainer. Now they have to wait because there's such a backlog in USCIS that sometimes cases wait many, many years and sometimes even decades, depending on the type of case you're filing. But we have, at this time, 100% success rate because we screen. Now, in that screening process, we find people who are 100% qualified. We know that they would be given a green card based on the circumstances, but they can't afford to pay. And that was the impetus for founding or starting the foundation. And so right now we offer counseling services, we offer classes, we're looking to expand our offering, and up until now it's just been a bandwidth thing for my wife and I, but again, it's finding the right people who are passionate and who can run with this project. There's a nationwide program called TVAP. It's for T-Visa, I forget the AP, but it's for victims of human trafficking. Okay. And so there are funds available for these people to assist them. There's only one organization in all of Phoenix for that entire population, and some of the other cities have many organizations. So there is a true need here in Phoenix, and we are We're trying to fill that and slowly build it. As you probably know, there is a ton of red tape around running a nonprofit. So we've been going slow where, with the business, sometimes you can kind of shoot from the hip. You're growing a business and you're just, you make mistakes and you learn to move on. But with a nonprofit, I feel like you got to be really careful how you do it. So it's been slower off the start line than we're used to and what we would like. But we are serving a large population. We're helping a lot of people. And counseling services are one of the main things that people just don't have access to. If you've been trafficked here to Phoenix, there's very low probability that you have resources to go out and get counseling services. So that was our first offering, and we're continuing to grow it from there.
So being a pilot for so long, and I'm sure you've flown all over the world, is there a special place that was one of your favorites over the years?
I have been all over the world. My wife and I have visited 54 countries.
Wow.
Actually, I think I'm ahead by like one. We have a little friendly competition going.
I'm ahead of you as well.
You're way, yeah. You've visited more countries than I have states, but yes.
I'm at 43.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, there's a few she'll never get, I think, that I have from my time in the military, but she's been to a few I haven't. We lived in Japan for a few years, and we loved it. We always said if we had the chance, we would go back and live there again. It's a beautiful country, like really safe, really kind people. We really enjoyed living there. We lived in Korea, we lived in England. And when you live somewhere, you just get a completely different experience than when you visit for a short amount of time. Flying-wise, there are some beautiful places in the world that I have flown, but I got to tell you, Arizona is one of the most beautiful places. Okay. You can take off in the Sonoran Desert, and in a couple of minutes, at least in a fighter jet, you can be at the Grand Canyon. And there's just a beautiful state all over. And I feel like flying here in Arizona for over 5 years, flew every low level available. Yeah. And I feel like I know the state pretty well. Okay. And it is beautiful and has some of the best flying that I've seen anywhere.
That's amazing.
Great.
Well, we really, really appreciate you being with us today, and just have to comment on the focus, right? I think we're always looking for what is that secret thing that we need, or, how do we make the business go forward? And you can have many different businesses and different outlets for things, but the core focus and the why behind everything you're doing, really staying centered, I think is such an important piece. And you really demonstrated that today in all of your answers, and just wanted to commend you guys on that. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. Thank you for being here. And if people want to get a hold of you, where should they reach out?
Yeah, we have newfrontier.com is our website, and you can find information about us there. We have 2 locations here in Phoenix. If people want to get involved, we host events on weekends. We're at events all over the valley. And you can also check me out. I do social media. I mostly talk about flying, a little bit about finance, financial freedom, those sorts of things. It's at Real Sean Walsh on any platform, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and look me up there.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. I love your podcast. Keep it up. I've gotten a lot of value from the episodes that I've listened to so far.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to The Confidence Curve. We hope today's episode left you inspired and ready to embrace your journey confidently. Remember, whether you're leading a team, growing your business, or pursuing personal growth, each step forward builds your curve. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. For more insights and resources, visit us at apexgts.com. Until next time, keep climbing the curve.